Hello again, and welcome back. First off, I just want to say thanks to everyone that's taken the time to watch episode 1 and actually offer some comments, and some people have direct messaged me on Instagram as well, which is great. Because I know people are watching, which is always a relief. But some interesting comments came my way regarding the Making a Puddle episode. So this is going to be episode 2, but it arguably would be episode 1B kind of thing. But I did the example on building a puddle using a tube of paint. As a matter of fact, it's just still sitting right over here. Little tube of ultramarine blue. But many people are using pans, so I figured I would just do a quick little re-demo of mixing up a puddle again, but this time using pans, because I suppose it's a little bit different. I did have the advantage of fresh tube right out of the fresh paint right out of the tube. So let's talk about how we would address that. Actually, I have two different little half pan palettes here. This one on the right is the Cotman Traveler's Box, I think. And it has an ultramarine in it, and I'm going to use that. And then this is a kit by Daniel Smith. So we have like a student grade paint, and then professional grade paint. They're both going to be pretty good. The difference generally between professional and student grade paint is going to be overall pigment load, meaning you're going to get a lot more pigment out of there for every stroke of the brush once it's wet. And then with the student grade paints, you're just going to need a little bit more elbow grease to get the paint out. But when these things are in the pan form, they're dry, because the main ingredients of the paints are going to be your pigment, and then with watercolor it's gum arabic, and gum arabic is the binder that allows us to re-wet watercolor. So with that information, what we want to do before we even start using half pans or full pans is we want to get them wet, so that we can actually start to activate some of that paint. So I always keep a little spray bottle around, and really all you want to do is just give them a little bit of a spritz and just get some water on the top of them. And you want that water to kind of sit in there for a little bit, and what it'll do is it starts to loosen up that top layer of paint. So you don't want to just go in with your brush and start working it into the paint. Get the brush a little bit dry, a little bit damp, and then go in there and run it across the paint. It's not too great for the bristles. In time, you'll find it will wear the bristles down, and you might start losing a little bit of your point. So you want to just get the paint a little wet to start with. You let it sit there. Like if I open up my studio palette before I paint, I'll just kind of spray a bunch of water in it, and then continue to get things set up. 5-10 minutes later, the water has soaked in nicely into the surface of the paint, and I'm all ready to go. So I'm not going to wait that long for this, but that's the general idea. I'm just noticing that the surface of that ultramarine in here there's little cracks around the sides, so the water's just running right off and going in. So nevertheless, a little bit of a spray on top of your dried pans. And then the process is the same thing, really. We're going to go and I'm going to scoop some water out, as you recall. Hopefully, maybe as you recall, if you watched episode 1, I just use my brush like a spoon. And if your brush doesn't pick up enough water, then you can actually literally use a spoon. I don't always I don't keep a spoon in my kit. I just kind of brought it down out of the kitchen, as a matter of fact, same place I got this plate. Don't tell my wife. got two similarly sized pools of paint. Why two? Well, because I'm actually going to use both the student grade and the artist grades paint. Okay, so I got two little pools of water here. I think those show up on there quite nicely. You can both see the pool there and the pool there. This tiny little drop up there is not important. Okay, then I'm just gonna take my brush, I'm gonna get some of the excess moisture out of it, and I'm gonna go into this ultramarine here from the Common. And I just wanna load my brush up with a bunch of pigment. So that water's been sitting on there. The whole surface was nice and wet, so I got a good bunch of pigment. And I can go in there and I can add that, just like I did in episode 1. And if I need more, then I just go back. Remember, I don't need to grab any more water. I've got all the water I want. But I need to grab more pigment. You will see a difference when I go to the other paint, how much quicker I'll be able to get a nice rich value. So it's getting close. So that's kind of 3 trips into this little half pan. And grab a little bit more. Okay, so I've got a mixture of blue there. I'm just gonna rest that there for a moment. And we'll just go over here and make a little square. And then with my brush fully loaded there, just do a little touch of the tip in there. I'll just come in and get that blue in here. As the brush is starting to run out of paint, I can just go back in, drop a little bit more of that mixture in. I'm not adding any water, right? I'm just using the mixture. So anything I put in here is gonna be nice and even. It's all the same. And tilt it a little bit, let that paint come down, and I fill in my shape. Okay, so that's with the Common, all right? Be a little bit of extra paint building up at the bottom. And just get the excess moisture out of my brush and just run it along the bottom and just pick that up. Okay. I'm going into a bucket off the side that's like a dirty bucket. Just getting some of that excess paint out of there, and then I'm just gonna run it across the towel and get all the moisture out. So I have just a damp brush. So this is the Common. Right there. And then I've got my puddle there, and now we'll go into the Daniel Smith, and I'll grab some paint off the top, and I'll come in here. And we'll grab a little bit more. See, so I've made 2 trips into that pan, and I'm almost at the same strength as the Common. So you'll find that's going to be your main difference between the two. All right, let me just rest that there for a moment. And we'll just go to the side here. Make a little square. And then we'll take our Daniel Smith ultramarine. And we'll do the same thing. Okay, once again, it's getting a little bit running out of paint, so I'm just going to go in here and grab a bit more out of that puddle. And then get the excess moisture out of my brush and pull any excess moisture out of the bottom here. It's pooling up at the bottom. Clean my brush. There we go. And this is the Daniel Smith. Okay, so that's building a puddle from your pans. Main thing being, you're gonna want to get these wet before you stick your brush in there. I gave it about a minute and change before I went in there with the brush. Generally, like I said, I'll give them a spritz about 5 to 10 minutes before I start painting. And by the time I go to paint, I've got lots of loose paint that I can grab with my brush. There was a difference in the amount of times I had to go and lift paint for the Cotman. And again, that's going to have something to do with the pigment load, higher pigment load in the more professional quality paints as opposed to the student paints. It just means you're just going to need to work a little harder to get it. Other than that, you see very similar results here between the two. So I hope that was helpful. And yeah, thanks again for tuning in, and paint on, my friends.